The desert planet Drenus was silent, hot, and endless. Red sand stretched in all directions, and the sun above burned without mercy. No trees, no animals. Only rocks, wind, and dust. Rick was the only human on the planet. He was a prospector, a person who searched lonely planets for rare metals and old ruins. He had been living alone on Drenus for 7 months in a small shelter made from metal and stone. Life was hard, but Rick didn't mind. He liked quiet places. They made him feel free. One day, while checking his equipment, Rick saw something strange. On his scanner, it was a weak signal, like a voice whispering from far away. The scanner showed that the signal came from the north, near a place called the Glass Ridge. Rick looked at the screen, confused. That area is dead. Nothing lives there, he said to himself. But the signal was real. It blinked again, slow, broken. But still alive. Rick grabbed his water bottle, goggles, and backpack. He climbed onto his desert bike, a machine with thick wheels and a strong engine. The bike roared to life, and he drove into the red wind, following the signal. After 2 hours of travel through sand and sharp rocks, Rick reached the edge of the Glass Ridge. This area had strange black stones that looked like broken glass. They were sharp and reflected the sunlight in bright flashes. Then he saw it, a small pod, half buried in the sand. It was made of smooth silver metal, shaped like a tear. It had burn marks on one side, and the hatch was open. Rick parked his bike and walked carefully toward the pod. His boots crunched on the sharp stones. Inside the pod, he found her. She was lying on her side, barely breathing. Her skin was pale and smooth, with a soft silver glow. Her hair was long and white, like moonlight. Her body was thin, almost weightless, and her face looked peaceful but full of pain. Rick froze. He had never seen an alien like this before. "Hey, are you alive?" he asked softly. The girl opened her eyes just a little. They were large and shining, like stars. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Rick touched her hand. It was cold. He looked at the sky. The heat was rising. She wouldn't survive out here much longer. "I won't let you die," Rick said, and picked her up gently. She was light as air. Rick carried her to his bike and laid her carefully in the back seat. He wrapped her in a heat blanket, then drove fast toward his shelter. The bike bounced over the sand, but Rick kept going, looking back at her every few seconds. When he reached the shelter, Rick placed her on his bed. He turned on his medical kit and used a scanner to check her condition. Severe dehydration, low oxygen, weak heart rate, the machine said. Rick worked quickly. He placed a breathing mask on her face and gave her water through a small tube. He used the healing spray to cool her skin. The machine beeped again, and her heart rate became stronger. Hours passed. Rick sat beside her, waiting and watching. At night, the wind outside grew strong. Sand hit the walls of the shelter like rain. Rick stayed awake, listening to the girl's slow breathing. He felt something strange in his chest. Worry. He didn't even know her name, but he wanted her to live. In the morning, she opened her eyes again. This time she looked at him longer. Her lips moved. She whispered. Rick leaned closer. "Your name is Nira?" She nodded very slowly. "I'm Rick," he said with a small smile. "You're safe now." Nira looked around the room. Her eyes were full of fear and confusion. Rick spoke slowly and clearly. "You crashed. I found you. You were almost gone, but I helped you. It's okay now." She tried to sit up, but her body was too weak. "Don't move yet. Rest." He gave her more water. She drank a little, then closed her eyes again. That day, Rick didn't go out to mine. He stayed near Nira, checking her vitals and making sure she stayed warm and safe. He tried to ask her questions, but she was too tired to speak much. Still, she listened. And she was alive. At night, Rick stood outside the shelter, looking up at the stars. The desert wind had calmed. The sky was clear, and the moons of Drenus glowed softly. "What are you, Nira?" he whispered. "Where did you come from?" He didn't know the answers yet, but he knew one thing: something had changed. His quiet world was no longer the same. A light had entered the desert, and he was not alone anymore. The days on Drenus were long and hot. The nights were cold and quiet. Time moved slowly on this lonely planet. But for Rick, everything had changed. Nira was still weak, but she was alive. Each day she opened her eyes a little longer. Her wounds were healing, and her skin had started to glow again, just a little. Her breathing was deeper now, and her eyes followed Rick as he moved around the shelter. Rick brought her water, gave her food paste, and checked her vitals with the scanner. She could not eat much, but she tried. And she always looked at him with soft, tired eyes. "You're stronger today," Rick said, smiling. "That's good." Nira blinked slowly. Her voice was still weak, but she whispered, "Thank you." "You're welcome," Rick replied. "You don't need to thank me. I couldn't leave you there." He sat down beside her and gave her a small warm stone to hold. She touched it gently, as if feeling something for the first time. "I'm Rick," he said again. "I live here. I dig in the sand for metal, old tech, things like that." Nira nodded slowly. After a pause, she said, "I am from Solari? Solari?" Rick asked, "Is that your planet?" Nira nodded again. "It is gone." Rick looked at her, confused. "Gone?" Nira closed her eyes for a moment. "Destroyed by Dark Ones. My people, we ran. I escaped. My pod crashed here." Her voice cracked, and Rick gave her more water. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't know." He felt something heavy in his chest. She had lost her home, her people, and now she was stuck on a dead planet far away from everything. But she was alive. Over the next few days, Rick helped her sit up. He made a soft backrest from old cloth and pillows. He showed her how to use the food machine and explained the simple words for water, light, heat, and rest. Nira learned fast. Her voice grew clearer. She spoke slowly, but she tried hard. Sometimes she mixed her words, but Rick didn't mind. "You learn fast," Rick said. One day, she pointed to the water bottle and said, "Cold drink." Nira smiled faintly. "You help, you kind." Rick looked away for a moment, feeling shy. No one had called him kind for a long time. Outside the shelter, the desert winds howled and the sun burned the sand. Inside, Rick and Nira sat together. Sometimes they said nothing at all, just listened to the sound of the wind and the soft humming of the machines. Nira asked many questions. "Why you here, alone?" She asked one night. Rick stared at the ceiling. "I used to work with others, on another planet, but there was a fight. Not war, just greed. People wanted power. I didn't want to be part of it, so I came here. Nobody bothers me on Drenus." Nira nodded. "You left pain." "Like me." "Yes," Rick said. They both sat in silence for a while. One evening, Nira asked, "You believe in stars?" Rick raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "My people. We follow starlight. It shows path. It has memory." Rick smiled. "I just use maps and scanners." Nira placed a hand on her chest. "Stars live here," she said. Inside. He didn't fully understand, but he liked how she said it. Later that night, she hummed a soft tune. It was like a song, but strange and peaceful. Rick listened without speaking. "That's from your home?" he asked. "Yes, for sleep. For hope." It made Rick feel calm, like the desert wasn't so empty anymore. The next morning, Rick showed Nira a small part of the desert from the roof hatch. He helped her sit with support and pointed out the sun towers, sand pits, and distant rocks shaped like broken ships. "This place is not pretty," Rick said, "but it's honest." Nira looked out with wide eyes. "Sky here, big. Feels open. Feels quiet. You get used to it. I like quiet." Rick looked at her and smiled. Then you're in the right place. Nira looked at the sun slowly rising. Her skin glowed faintly in the light. Suddenly, the scanner beeped. A warning. Rick ran inside and checked the panel. "Storm coming," he said. "Big one." He rushed to secure the shelter. Metal plates closed over the windows. Power lines were locked down. He brought Nira back to bed and made sure she was safe. The storm hit in the afternoon. Wind slammed against the walls. Dust and sand roared outside like a wild beast. The shelter shook, but it held strong. Inside, Rick sat next to Nira. She looked at him with calm eyes. "You protect." "Like my brother did," she whispered. "You had a brother?" "Yes, gone now." "I'm sorry." She reached out slowly and touched his hand. Her fingers were warm now. "Not cold like before. You saved me. I remember this always." Rick didn't know what to say. He just nodded. The storm raged outside, but inside the small shelter, something peaceful had started. 2 lost souls from different stars had found each other, and neither of them felt alone anymore. After the great storm passed, the desert was quiet again. But the world around Rick and Nira was no longer the same. Nira had become stronger. She could now walk a few steps with Rick's help. Her skin glowed softly in the morning light, and her silver hair flowed behind her like gentle wind. She spoke more clearly, learning Rick's language faster each day. "Today I walk alone," she said with a soft smile, trying to stand without help. Rick chuckled and stood beside her. "Easy now, this sand doesn't forgive." He watched as she took 3 steps across the shelter floor. Her legs trembled, but she kept going. Then she stopped and looked back at Rick. "I did it." Rick clapped lightly. "Yes, you did." After that day, Nira began joining Rick outside for short moments. She sat near the shelter, looking at the red hills, the broken rocks, and the wide sky. Everything was new to her. Even the small things made her smile. Dust storms in the distance, small desert winds, and the sound of metal birds that flew high in the sky. One evening, Nira pointed to a flat area behind the shelter. "We build there," she said. Rick blinked. "Build? Build what?" "Place to grow." "Light garden," Nira replied. "You mean a greenhouse?" "Yes, my people. We grow food with star power. I still have small tech." She showed Rick a small silver cube from her escape pod. It had been hidden in her suit. Rick studied it. It hummed softly and gave off warm light. "This is Solari tech?" Rick asked. Nira nodded. "It can change sunlight, give life." Rick was impressed. His own crops never lasted more than a few weeks in Drina's soil. But with her help, things might be different. So they began building. Together, they worked for days. Rick shaped metal frames while Nira guided him. She explained where to place the solar mirrors and how to connect the cube to the power core. Rick used old parts from his mining equipment and bits from crashed machines. Nira planted strange seeds from her world inside the garden dome. She placed them in soft dust, then placed small glowing stones around them. "These help grow fast," she said. Rick asked, "What kind of plants are these?" "Food and light flowers." He nodded, though he didn't fully understand. But he trusted her. As they worked, they laughed more. They talked about small things, about Earth's rain and Solari's floating rivers. Nira listened with wonder as Rick told stories of oceans, birds, and blue skies. Rick listened closely as Nira spoke of star dances and sky temples. One night, when the dome was almost ready, they sat together under the stars. Nira looked up and said, "Do you see that bright one?" "Yes," Rick replied. "It looks like a blue spark." "That was my home, Solari." Rick stared at the star in silence. "It is far now, but I still feel it." "You miss it?" "Yes, but now this is home too," she said, looking at Rick. Rick didn't answer right away. He just smiled, and they sat quietly. The garden dome opened for the first time after 10 days. The plants inside had started growing small green vines and glowing flowers. Rick touched one leaf. It was warm. This is amazing, he whispered. Nira placed her hand on the ground. Life returns. That day, Rick cooked a special meal using his stored supplies and a few of Nira's fruits. They ate together under the light of 2 moons. You've changed this place, Rick said. It doesn't feel so empty anymore. You changed me, Nira replied. You gave me hope again. As the days passed, they built more things: water collectors, sun panels, and even a small sitting area made from stone and cloth. Their bond grew stronger. Rick no longer called her the alien girl in his mind. She was just Nira now. A part of his world. One afternoon, as Rick fixed a power cable, he noticed Nira drawing shapes in the sand. What are you making? He asked. Starlines. Stories from Solari. She drew circles, lines, and a symbol that looked like a sun with wings. This means light unites, she explained. Rick sat beside her and watched. It's beautiful. Nira looked at him, her eyes full of something soft and deep. You are light to me. Rick looked down at the sand, feeling warmth in his chest. You too, he said quietly. That night, while the desert winds whispered outside, Nira placed a glowing stone beside Rick's bed. For peace. To guard dreams, she said. Rick touched the stone and felt a strange calmness. Thank you, Nira. She smiled and walked away slowly, her silver hair shining in the dark. Rick lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He had come to this planet to be alone, to escape the noise of the galaxy. But now he was not alone. And he didn't want to be. He didn't fully understand what was growing between them, but it felt real. In the deep silence of the desert, under stars both strange and known, 2 hearts, one human and one Solari, began to beat in the same rhythm, and for the first time in many years, Rick looked toward the future with hope. The days passed peacefully on Drenus. Rick and Nira worked together, ate together, and watched the skies at night. The garden dome was full of green light, and small fruits from Nira's plants had begun to grow. The shelter, once quiet and cold, now felt alive, but peace never lasts forever. One evening, as Rick was checking the power panel near the garden, the warning alarm started to blink. A low red light flashed on the screen. Something was approaching from the sky. Unknown ship entering. Low orbit, the system said in a calm voice. Rick stood still, then quickly called Nira. Nira! Come inside. She rushed over, her silver hair tied back, holding a basket of glowing leaves. What is it? She asked, her voice tense. Rick pointed at the screen. A ship, not mine. Not from the outposts either. Nira's face turned pale. Show me. When she looked at the screen, she froze. That symbol, she whispered. It belongs to the Dark Ones. They hunt what is left of my people. Rick's jaw tightened. They're looking for you, she nodded. They must have followed my escape signal. Rick turned off the outside lights and began to shut down power systems. The shelter went dark, and only the low red glow of the warning light remained. We need to hide you, Rick said. Fast. He guided her to the underground storage room. Beneath the shelter. It was built for tools and water tanks, but it had space. You'll be safe here. I'll lock it from above. They won't find you. Nira grabbed his hand. You shouldn't fight them. I won't run, Rick said. This is my home too, and I won't let them take you. He placed a soft blanket around her and handed her a light stone. I'll come back. I promise. Nira looked up at him with shining eyes. Be careful. Rick climbed back up and sealed the hatch. Then he checked his traps. Over the months, he had placed alarms and basic defense tools around the shelter, mostly to keep animals away. But now he would use them for something worse. The ship landed a few kilometers away. Through his binoculars, Rick saw 3 figures step out. They wore black armor with red visors. Their movements were sharp and quiet, like shadows in the sand. Rick took a deep breath. "Okay," he whispered. "Let's make this hard for them." He pressed a button. One of the traps, an old mining drone, came to life and sped toward the intruders, spraying sand to blind them. The raiders fired energy blasts, destroying it, but it gave Rick time to move to a new hiding spot behind a large stone. From there, he triggered a small explosion under the sand, another trap he had prepared long ago. Boom! Dust and smoke filled the air. One of the raiders fell. The other two moved toward the shelter, now alert and ready. Rick ran toward the back entrance. He grabbed his laser cutter, an old tool used for rocks, but sharp enough to defend. He waited until one of the raiders got close. Then he jumped over. "Here!" he shouted. The raider turned and fired. The blast hit Rick's side, but his armor vest blocked most of it. He dropped to the ground and rolled behind a dune. The raider chased, stepping right into a net trap. Metal wires snapped around his body and held him in place. Rick limped back toward the shelter. His arm hurt, but he kept moving. The last raider broke the door open and entered. Inside, the shelter was quiet. No sign of Nira. Rick stepped in behind him, holding the cutter. The raider turned, aiming his blaster, but before he could fire, Rick threw a flashstone at his feet. A burst of white light exploded. The raider cried out, blinded. Rick charged, knocking him to the floor. He grabbed the blaster and hit the raider with the back of it. The black armored figure fell still. Silence. Rick stood there, breathing hard. He looked around, making sure the fight was over. Then he opened the hatch. Nira looked up, scared. "It's over," Rick said, offering his hand. "You're safe." She climbed out, her hands shaking. "You fought for me," Rick nodded. "I told you I wouldn't let them take you." She touched his wounded arm. "You're hurt. I'll survive." She placed her hand over the injury, and her skin began to glow. Rick felt warmth spread through his body. The pain started to fade. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Sharing life energy. It helps. But it's dangerous for you. I won't lose you," she whispered. "Not after everything." That night, they sat in silence as the wind blew softly over the sand. The bodies of the raiders had been buried far from the shelter. The stars above were clear and peaceful. Rick looked at Nira. "I thought I came here to live alone," he said. "But now I don't want that anymore." Nira took his hand gently. "You are not alone now." And in the heart of a dead world, they felt something living grow between them, stronger than fear, stronger than silence. The sun rose over the desert, casting golden light across the sand. The battle was over, but the memory stayed fresh in Rick's mind. He had fought raiders before, but this time was different. This time, he had someone to protect. Nira stayed close to him now. She moved around the shelter with more strength, but her eyes often searched the sky. She knew more might come. The danger was not gone completely, but Rick wasn't afraid anymore. He had faced the worst, and he had won with Nira's help. One morning, Rick woke up to find Nira outside, standing barefoot on the sand, facing the rising sun. Her hands were raised, and her hair moved in the soft wind. Light gathered around, her fingertips like dust turning into stars. He stepped outside quietly. "What are you doing?" Nira turned slowly and smiled. "Calling light. Giving thanks." Rick walked beside her. "You always speak to the sky." "It listens," she said, "even when people do not." He nodded, though he didn't understand fully. Her ways were strange but gentle. She made him believe the desert wasn't empty yet. Was waiting. That day, they worked together to rebuild the shelter entrance, which had been damaged in the attack. Rick hammered new plates in place while Nira checked the power cables. "Stronger now," she said, touching the new wall. "Yes," Rick replied. "We both are." Later, Nira brought out something from her pot, a small crystal orb that glowed blue from within. "This is Memory Stone," she said. "It shows images of the past. She placed it on the table, and light filled the room. Rick saw floating cities above oceans of silver. He saw tall beings like Nira, singing in circles of fire and light. He saw children running under golden trees, and giant flying creatures moving between stars. Then the colors turned dark, black ships. Fire in the sky, screams, her people running. The fall of Solari. Rick stood still, watching in silence. Nira's voice was soft. "This is what I lost." He looked at her, eyes full of sorrow. "And now, you're the only one left?" "I don't know," she said. "But I remember them, always." Rick sat down. "And now, you have new memories too, here, with me." Nira nodded. "Yes, with you." Time passed, but the bond between them grew stronger each day. They no longer needed many words. A look, a smile, or a small touch said more than speech ever could. One evening, Rick was working late on a small wind tower. The sun had gone down, and the stars were beginning to shine. He looked over his shoulder and saw Nira watching him. She walked toward him, holding a glowing flower from their garden. "For you," she said. "This flower opens only when two hearts are close." Rick took it gently. "You think our hearts are close? I feel it. When you are near, my light becomes warmer." Rick smiled. "I never thought I'd feel this again. Not here. Not in the middle of nowhere." She reached out and held his hand. "You gave me life again," she said. "And not just breath, but reason to keep going." Rick looked into her shining eyes. "You did the same for me." They stood together, quiet under the night sky. The desert wind blew softly around them, like the planet itself was listening. The next day, Nira showed Rick an ancient Solari ritual. It was a simple act made with hands and light. She formed a circle of small stones and placed a sun crystal in the center. "In my people's way," she explained, "when two lives choose to walk together, they share the light. Not just for now, but for all paths ahead." Rick looked at the glowing crystal. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" She nodded. "If you wish, we can bond. Not just in words, but in soul." Rick thought about his old life, the one he had left behind. Then he looked at the life he had now, a shelter full of warmth, a garden full of light, and Nira, a star from a broken world, standing beside him. "I do wish," he said. So they stood inside the circle. Nira took his hands, and a soft golden light wrapped around them. The sun crystal glowed brighter, then gently dimmed. Their eyes met, and no more words were needed. That night, they shared a quiet meal and sat outside to watch the stars. Nira rested her head on Rick's shoulder. He placed his arm around her. "Don't know what will come next," Rick said, "but I want to face it with you. We face it together," she said. Human and Solari, two hearts once broken by loss, now beat together in harmony. And in the middle of a silent desert, a new kind of love was born, simple, honest, and strong. The bond between Rick and Nira grew stronger with each passing day. The desert, once empty and silent, now felt like a place full of meaning. Together, they had created something beautiful, life in a place meant for nothing but dust and wind. The small shelter had become more than a home. It was now a place of light, warmth, and hope. Rick and Nira began to build more. They added a second garden dome and placed more sun crystals around the area. These crystals, made from Nira's people's technology, stored sunlight and released it during the night. The desert glowed softly under the stars. One day, while they worked on a water filter system, Nira looked at Rick and said, "We should make our bond known." Rick stopped what he was doing and looked up. "What do you mean?" "In my people's way," Nira explained. "A true bond must be shown under the open sky, with the land and stars as witnesses." Rick smiled. "Like a wedding?" Nira tilted her head. "What is that?" Rick chuckled. "A human way of saying two people want to stay together forever. We wear special clothes, say words, and sometimes share rings." Nira smiled gently. Then we will do both. A Solari bond and a human wedding, our own way. Rick nodded. I like that. They picked a date. It was the next twin sunrise, when both sons of Drenus would shine together in the sky. That only happened once every 4 months. It was rare and powerful, just like their bond. Over the next few days, they prepared. Nira made decorations from glowing leaves and stones. Rick carved a small ring from desert crystal and shaped a band from a metal piece he had saved. It was rough, but strong just like his life. Nira also shared her own gift, a pair of light bracelets made from star thread. When touched together, the bracelets glowed with soft warmth. These are Solari promise bands, she explained. They carry energy from both hearts. Rick held one and nodded. This is perfect. When the special day arrived, the desert was calm. The sky was clear, and the two suns began to rise slowly together, shining golden light across the sand. Rick wore a clean shirt, patched many times but neatly pressed. Nira wore a dress she made herself from soft fabric and small silver shells she found near the dry riverbed. Her hair was tied with threads of light. She looked like a living star. They stood together under the open sky near the garden dome. As the two suns reached the top of the sky, Rick took her hands. I don't have perfect words. I'm just a man who came here to escape, but you changed that. You gave me peace, love, and purpose. I promise to stay with you, protect you, and never let you walk alone. Nira smiled, her eyes bright. I came here in pain, lost and alone. But your kindness gave me strength. Your heart gave me a new path. I promise to walk beside you, share my light, and grow with you. They placed the bracelets on each other's wrists. When they touched both, bands glowed warmly. Then Rick gave her the ring. This is for you, from me. A simple human gift. Nira accepted it with both hands and placed it on her finger. It is not simple, it is strong. They held each other's hands as the sun warmed their faces. No one else was there, but it didn't matter. The stars above and the land below were their witnesses. After the promise, they shared food from their garden. They laughed and told each other memories from their past's funny stories, old mistakes, and dreams they once had. It felt like the start of something new, not just between two people, but between two worlds. That evening, Rick activated the signal tower. It was a long-range radio built from parts of old machines. He had kept it off for many months, not wanting to speak to anyone beyond Drenus. But now he wanted to share a message. He recorded a short signal. This is Rick, human settler on Drenus. Life has returned here. A place once forgotten now grows again. There is peace here. And something worth building. If you are seeking a place to start again, come in peace. He sent the message into space. Nira placed her hand on his shoulder. Do you think they will come? Maybe, Rick replied. And if they do, they will see what we've made. Over the next few days, they expanded their home. Nira shared more of her knowledge. Together, they made small lights from star energy and taught desert plants to grow faster with Solari water codes. Rick added new tools to help with repairs and mining. Every evening, they sat together and watched the stars. We are like two seeds from different trees, Rick said one night. But now we've grown into something new, Nira nodded. And it will bloom. From that day on, they were not just Rick and Nira, they were a team. A family. A bond not built by war, power, or duty, but by choice, love, and trust. The twin sons of Drenus rose slowly across the red desert, painting the sky in soft gold and light orange. The wind carried warm air over the sand. It was peaceful, almost like the planet itself had taken a deep breath. Inside the shelter, Rick and Nira sat by the window. They shared a small breakfast made from fruits grown in the dome and fresh water gathered from their filter. This place is changing, Rick said, watching the garden dome glow in the morning light. Yes, Nira agreed. and it feels alive. Now a small green plant peeked through the sand outside, near the rocks. It was the first wild plant Rick had seen grow naturally on Drenus. Even without planting it, something had begun to grow on its own. Maybe the planet was healing. Nira touched her bracelet, which still glowed gently whenever Rick was near. "Your message. It is still out there?" "Yes," Rick said. "The signal is open. If someone hears it, they'll come." They didn't have to wait long. A week after the signal was sent, a ship appeared in the sky. But it was not a black raider ship. It was small, silver, and marked with the peaceful flag of Earth explorers. It landed carefully near the old canyon. Rick and Nira stood together as the ship opened. 3 humans stepped out, dressed in explorer suits. One of them raised a hand. "We received your message," he said. "Is this Drenus Station?" "It used to be," Rick replied. "Now it's home." The explorers looked around in surprise. They saw the garden domes, the clean air pipes, the small tower, and the green vines hanging from the roof. This was none the last report," the second explorer said. "There was nothing here." "There was," Rick replied, "just hidden, waiting for someone to care." The third explorer stared at Nira. "Is she human?" "No," Nira answered. Gently, "I am Solari." The explorers looked at each other, unsure. Rick stepped forward. "She's not dangerous. She's the reason this place is alive." "We've never seen a Solari before," one explorer said. "We thought they were all gone." "Not all," Nira replied. "Some light survives." "Rick!" And Nira invited the visitors inside. They showed them the garden, the water system, the crystals, and the healing stones. The explorers took notes and asked many questions. "This is incredible," the leader said. "You've turned a dead planet into something new. Earth Command will want to know about this." Rick nodded. "That's why I sent the signal." Before the explorers left, one of them asked, "Do you want us to report your bond?" "Our bond is already strong," Nira said. "But if others wish to learn from us, they are welcome." The ship left the next day, flying back into space with a copy of the garden design and samples of Solari tech. Days later, more messages came. Earth Command sent a reply. "Peaceful settlers may join." Drenus is now an open colony project. Soon more ships arrived. Small families, workers, engineers, and a few scientists came. They were not soldiers or hunters. They brought tools, tents, and seeds. Some had lost homes in space wars. Some were looking for a fresh start. Rick and Nira welcomed them. They helped each group build shelters. Nira taught them how to use the light crystals and water threads. Rick trained them on solar panels, filters, and desert survival. Within 2 months, a small village stood where once there was only sand. Children ran near the garden domes. Light towers lit the area at night. People planted flowers and built a meeting circle made from stone. At the center of the circle stood a tall crystal, glowing with the combined energy of human tech and Solari light. "We will call this place Sol Haven," one settler suggested, "for Solari and for sunlight." Everyone agreed. One evening, Rick stood at the top of a dune, watching the village lights twinkle like stars. Nira walked up beside him and held his hand. "Do you miss being alone?" she asked. Rick shook his head. "Not anymore. I didn't know how much I needed others until you came." "You gave light a place to grow again," she said. He turned to her. "No, we did." In the village, people began to share stories of Rick and Nira, the man who saved a dying girl from the stars, the girl who brought green back to the sand. 2 souls from different worlds who built peace together. Their story gave people hope. And that hope became a seed. Many settlers brought their own dreams. Some wanted to build schools. Others started farms, workshops, or star viewing stations. Nira and Rick were always there to help, guiding, listening, teaching. One night, a young child asked Rick, "Are you a hero?" Rick smiled gently. No, just someone who didn't walk away. The child nodded and ran off to chase glowing bugs in the field. That night, Rick and Nira sat under the stars once again. The desert wind was soft. The land was no longer silent. I think this is what Solari always hoped for, Nira whispered. Not to rule, just to live in peace. And that's what we'll protect, Rick replied. Together. The stars above twinkled like tiny lights, and the red sands of Dreenus no longer felt forgotten. Because in a place once filled with nothing, two hearts had created everything. A new dawn had come. And with it, a future full of life.